Do you think about your own personal style, or is whatever you write just by its nature a reflection of your musical personality?
I think it has morphed into that. There's some things I think that I know that I go to, there are sort of my go-tos and things that just happen to be a result of, um, what has come from before. So I guess that's what's become my style. And I get teased. My husband teases me about some of my lines because it's because this predictable thing that I'm going to end up doing. And so I've actually tried to get away from some of that a little bit because I want to try to grow still.
Mm-hmm.
I still believe that I'm growing. So, but yeah, I feel like there's, like you said, that you could hear going from one, contrasting from one track to the other, but it's still obvious that it's me. And the one thing that's a little bit jarring for me is when I hear my students start to sound like me.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah, that's jarring because it's like I know where I imitated Bob or when I imitated Maria or somebody, right? I know when that happened. But when I started to hear them imitate me, I was like, oh, is this a good thing? I don't know. But it is a compliment, I guess you could say. But
Sure. Yeah.
but it's kind of fun. And the funny thing is, I can point out exactly what they're doing. That is mine. And I'm like,
Interesting.
you did that because I did that on this tune.
Hmm.
I did that on this tune. I know exactly what you're doing.
Yeah. Do you try to steer them away from that, or do you let them embrace it as a part of their?
I let them embrace it. I mean, sometimes it's fun because I hear a combination of me and Brookmeyer, particularly coming out of my Brookmeyer class. I mean, the movie makes a lot of sense, and so that's fun. And I just think of it how I imitated Brookmeyer and sort of just let them do that as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I
Sure.
also try to, and then there are those that don't, and that's awesome. But I love that because I can work with somebody still using the tools that I got from Bob, and then having them, but also within their style.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd be like,
Sure.
you're not expanding this here. You got to do this, and that sort of a thing. And I'm like, this is you. This sounds like you, and that's cool. And let's keep it that way and figure out how to expand within that. So,
Cool. How do you think about form?
um, so again, it depends on what I'm doing. It's very strange. I'm very kind of weirdly traditional in form.
Mm-hmm.
Where I just have an intro, exposition, solo sections or solo section, and then sort of almost like a head out, depending on whether, um, you know, it is. So that's sort of how I think about form. Um, I have written sort of lead sheet tunes in the past and stuff like that, and would stick with traditional forms as well. On occasion, I just kind of let it go and just blast through the whole thing and see where things come from. A lot of what I write is through composed.
Mm-hmm.
Even if there's sort of an allusion to what has happened before, it's always manipulated in a different way. Like whether it's a different tonal center, rhythms are changed a little bit, motif is developed a little bit more. The concepts that I try to teach is repetition, variation, and contrast.
Mm-hmm.
You repeat with variation, eventually you'll lead to contrast. So I try to do that a bit in my writing, and then that just kind of, on a macro level, as I said, form is pretty conventional to me.
Okay.
I'm not sure if that's what you were looking for.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I think in particular the nature of the music being, to some degree, through composed, in that you can choose to do whatever you want. It isn't, here's an AABA 32 bar thing that I'm going to arrange for the band. It's that you have the option to manipulate whatever you want in whatever way you want.
Yeah.
And then it's just about putting the piece together as okay, here's the contour of the piece. Here's where the solos are going to come in. Here's the intro. Here's how we're going to end it, et cetera, et cetera.
I think transitions are usually the toughest part for most composers, and I struggle with
that.
I struggle with that as well, because you're trying to go from one so-called section to the next, and even within an AABA arrangement is like, how do you glue that together so it doesn't sound like you're, just like some like ideal book accompaniment type situation,
Right. Yeah.
So the ideas of interludes or alluding to what's going to happen next, is those are sort of details, but I like to come up with an at least a form of a macro idea of what I am composing initially, big picture stuff, so that I will work within that. Another thing that Brookmeyer would talk about is 3 times is the charm, so to say. Although he was married 4 times. I would say that. But with the idea of that you need to present something at least 3 times. But within those 3 times, you're going to do it with some variation, very slight. Because it's so that the listener can get accustomed to what your musical idea is.